Are you struggling with your teenager? Are you feeling frustrated? Are you bumping your head against the wall because your teenager is driving you up that wall? Anyway, this interview we are about to do is for you, and we wanted to find an expert that can help us become better parents for our teenagers. But to do so, we had to invite the one and only Dr. Russell Hyken, who is a teenage expert. Yes, he's a parenting teenage expert, and we ask him the questions that you probably are asking yourselves. So sit back to get your notepad out and take some notes. Okay, so Dr. Russell, here's the thing. Teenage years.
Yeah.
I love kids, but at least I'm going to speak from my heart.
It can be challenging sometimes.
It's very, very challenging. So real quickly, how do you suggest any lost parent out there, how do they navigate the teenage years?
Yeah, in those teenage years, really things change quite a bit, as you guys know. It's almost like they're back to the terrible twos. You know, all of a sudden we got kids having tantrums and making demands. So how do we navigate that is a great question. And I think a big thing is, one, understanding how a teen thinks, but also as a parent, you got to shift your role. When our kids were little, we could manage them. We could say, I'm going to make this play date for you. You're going to eat this, or I'm going to do this. You could really manage them. Now you really need to shift that role to being a consultant. You want to be in collaboration with them because they're just not going to listen to you the way they used to. It doesn't mean you're not in their head, but it doesn't.
Yes.
But they're just.
So how do you do that though? How do you shift that? Because that's hard for some parents.
It definitely is.
It could be challenging. You're thinking that you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z because you said to do X,
I'm the
Y,
parent. You're the child. You listen to me.
Francis, that's going to draw battle lines. And even as the professed teen parenting expert, if I get into an argument with my kids, it's all about winning. It's not about solving the problem. And so that's where I think you have a consistent, positive, loving environment. So when your kids do have problems and when you do get into issues with them, you've got this base to go back to. They're already pre-wired to make good decisions. But kind of going back to that original comment, it's switching from manager consultant means really shifting to a listener and a person who asks questions. So don't automatically assume, if your kid comes home and I got an F on that paper, it's not why did you get an F? That's a bad question. The question should be, how are we going to do better next time? What's the plan? So that's the question. So listen and turn it into a positive and take away the negative. Now, the F is a bad thing, and if they continue to get Fs, there's a problem. But it's also figuring out how we're going to do better when we have to do it again.
So as parents, we have to be more understanding as well.
You have to kind of retrain the mentality going in where it's not going to be, once they start hitting those teenage years, you kind of have to shift from I'm going to tell this person what to do to I'm going to help this person get through this challenging time.
Because when you tell, and teens are not reasonable thinking yet. They have moments of clarity. But, they're very impulsive. You got to get inside the teen head, and the teen head is saying, if it feels good, that's what I'm going to do. So they're not looking at the big picture. Why did that child fail that paper? Well, maybe something came up that seemed like more fun at the time than doing the paper. So it's understanding that, their impulsivity is going to trump logic. So how you approach them is you don't want them to impulsively respond in a negative way to you. So like I said, again, shifting that pattern of thinking. And it can be really hard as a parent. And even as like the two of you guys, are sitting around, alone at night talking about your kids, talk about the approach you want to have with them. Use each other as a sounding board because it's hard not to be emotional. I get emotional. My kid does something wrong. I want to get mad, and that's okay. We can get mad and we can give consequences, but we also have to figure out what are we going to learn from this and how are we going to move it forward and how are we going to keep that connection.
There's times where you feel like if you say turn left, turn left, turn left, they're just going to turn right. What do you say to that parent who literally feels lost?
I get to that. That happens. So hopefully you've provided a good foundation for your kids. And what's a good foundation? That's that consistency piece that I was talking about. So even before they get to the teenage years, hopefully you've been this loving, caring, great parent to this small child who's growing up. So you have that foundation. So always keep that in mind. Also know your kids are going to make mistakes. And sometimes the only way to learn is to let your child make that mistake and just be there to clean up the mess, let the tears
Mm.
flow, do what you need to do. But again, it's about avoiding that argument, and it's the way you approach the negative situation. So, if your child's room, your teenager's room is a mess, and you've said time and time and again, clean up your room, clean up your room. Well, that's not working. So you need to come up with a different approach, and figuring out what approach is going to work for your child, because every child is different. So for one kid, I might say to the parent, close the door, don't do the laundry, don't go into the room, let that room get so gross that kid's going to get grossed out himself. That may work. Another comment maybe is like, you take a different approach. Wow, I see your room's really a mess these days. What's going on in your life that you haven't been able to get to your room to clean it up?
Mm.
Something else, taking up your time. What can I do to help you? It just sort of depends on the child, but it's a lot of trial and error. And what works today, guys, is not necessarily going to work tomorrow. So keep going.
Well, you said a lot of great things. I think the one is the one that impacted me the most is simply let your kid lose and let them struggle and let them figure things out on their own. I think oftentimes many of us are guilty because we love them and we want to protect them. And some of us are more guilty than others. I don't know if I made that a little too obvious.
My wife would look at me and say, I'm the one that wants to fix the problem, and she's the tough love one. So.
Well, we change roles, but
we do change roles a lot.
She doesn't like to see her baby struggle. So
yeah.
I've come to a comfortable place where I feel and know it's so important for them to struggle and to learn while they're under our roof, and we can catch them and support them and help them get through any difficult things. So one question is, before I forget it, is what do you say to the mother who continuously wants to protect and help out of love and doesn't want to see their child hurt? Or struggle or lose a game,
or the father,
But what do you say to that parent?
Well, first off, and I'm assuming we're not doing that conversation in front of the kids. So you want to do that conversation on your own, and just asking each other, what's the worst that can happen here? That's really the bottom line. Our jobs, our kids' jobs, we want them to be physically safe. So don't jump off the roof into the pool, because that's not physically safe. We want them to be safe from, just bad decisions. We don't want to get that call that they've done something wrong at school. So we want them to be safe from bad decisions, and we want them to be emotionally safe. And that's the hardest part. But that painful part, that, not winning, their growth comes from that. So as I said before, when they do have that struggle, you need to be there to pick up the pieces. And it doesn't mean lecturing. It doesn't mean telling them what they should have done. Sometimes it may just be that shoulder for your kids to cry on. And those are actually great parenting moments as a parent. When your 15, 16-year-old's crying on your shoulder because they made a mistake, and yeah, your heart's broken, but what a connection. And just being there and letting them have that moment, because, teenagers know right from wrong. They know they're not supposed to eat the whole bag of Oreos. They know they're not supposed to tell you they're asleep when they're awake and they don't want to do chores. They know these things.
Yeah, you sound like you have a camera in our house and you're just catching. You know exactly what our kids are doing. I don't know how you do that.
At a time and said, we need to talk to TJ about these things.
It's either that or you have kids and teens of your own, and you know how it is.
Yeah. I have a question as far as the pandemic, like you said, has changed parenting so much, and before the virus, we really our kids didn't have much technology and they were so busy, but now I feel like we've lost control of that a bit.
Teens always need structure. That's really, really important. I think with COVID-19, though, the way we look at structure needs to have shifted a little bit. I just recently wrote an article about, I'm letting my kid play a video game till 1 or 2 in the morning on occasion.
Yes.
This is really hard for me, because my professional training, my parenting doesn't want to let my 17-year-old be on his games until 2 in the morning. But here's the thing. He's making good grades and he's generally respectful. And those are the expectations. And he knows those expectations. And when kids know the expectations, they're not going to go out and violate them every night. If you say, hey, you know what it is, Tuesday night, you're caught up in a big game of NFL or NBA, and you're playing and it goes a little late, it's okay, because you're doing all right. You can't do that every night. But you know what? We'll make an exception because you're doing your job. And I think that's the way to look at it. So structure is important, but being a little more flexible because of the pandemic. And as long as they're doing those things, I think a teenager has a few basic responsibilities. They need to earn good grades, and what that is for each house varies. I sort of like the rule of I want my kid to earn mostly B's with a couple of A's. I'd love him to earn straight A's. Don't get me wrong. But I also don't want to set that, if he's not a straight A kid, that's his choice. But B's, better than average. I want my kid to be better than average. I want him to be respectful to me and my wife and to everybody around him. Always be respectful to adults. That doesn't mean you can't disagree, but you need to do it in a respectful way. Do something that makes you interesting and be involved in an extracurricular, which right now is a little tough, but there's ways for kids to join the world, whether it's some type of online thing. My kid's playing a varsity sport right now. They're playing, not every game gets played, but they're playing, but he's part of a team, and I think it's okay for them to make mistakes and engage in bad behavior, but they need to know how to apologize for it, and they need to feel truly remorseful. And if you're doing all those things and your kids are doing all those things, we're winning as parents. That's what we want.
That helps. That helps a lot.
Well, and I love the way you say that, because I think oftentimes we are self-critical on our parenting. If our kids are going to make mistakes, they're going to screw up. They're going to do things that we call bonehead decisions. But like you said, as long as they are learning, they're apologizing, they're living with respect, and they're trying, that's all we as parents can really, that's what we should be celebrating and be happy with. I want to ask you a question. If a kid is feeling a sense of hopelessness, that they seem to not care so much with what's going on or with the results, is there anything you can think that we as parents can do to re-inspire our kid to go for things and to believe in themselves and to be, that youth spirit of I can do this, of just bringing energy back? Because I see sometimes teenagers, they seem to get dull on us and really sad and depressed because of all this pressure or whatever it is. Is there any advice we could do as parents to help those kids refine their vitality?
I think what you're saying is when that kid feels defeated, when your teenager just feels like nothing's going right, what can you do? And to go back a comment I made earlier is, first off, let them be sad for a little bit. Be that shoulder to cry on. Don't let them stay in that for longer than feels comfortable. And feels is the word that I want to use here. Trust your parental instincts. Some kids may need 10 minutes to recover and some may need 2 days to recover. But when you start going, wow, he's taking a lot longer to get going than he should, there may be a bigger problem. And that may be the time to consult with a family therapist or an adolescent therapist. The other piece is that you can give advice and kids will listen for the most part. Don't expect them to follow it, but really try and empower them to, you hated that teacher, class is not going well. What are you going to do? And if the comment is, I'm just going to survive the semester and I'm not taking that teacher again, I'll go with that because that's a plan. So try to figure out what their plan is. It doesn't mean that they have to sort of be revitalized, but it needs to mean that they're moving that direction. And so, but if they're constantly running into those issues, if they're constantly running out of steam, if they constantly feel defeated, something bigger may be going on. So again, trust your feelings, trust your gut, and decide, what do we need to do? Do we need to go to the school counselor to maybe start that process? Because school counselors are a great resource. Is it going to a professional counselor and talking to your school about where you should go or what's going on? I mean, if your kid says, hey, I'm really having problems with this peer or this class, and you go to the school counselor and the school counselor says, yeah, I got about 6 kids that have come to me in the past 2 weeks about that situation, then your kid's not alone. So sort of look for ways to build on what's happening and to figure out what the plan is.
Love it. Another question I have, on the flip side, teenagers often think they know everything. They think they can go out there, walk outside the door and just dominate the world, and you parents don't know anything and you're in their way, and you're so old fashioned. Whatever it is, oftentimes teenagers think they're ahead of the game, maybe more so than they really are. Any advice for a parent who's handling that teen who just seems to think they know every answer and thinks that you are in their way?
And that is pretty typical of most teens. At some point, your teenage child will act like they know more than you, and maybe even on a regular basis. So it's really about choosing those battles wisely. Is it something that, if they're, going back to my safety comment that I made earlier, if they're doing something dangerous, then it's time to just be the parent, put your foot down, say you're not going to do that. And there's going to be a consequence. But let them kind of experiment and figure things out on their own, because they are going to come back to you. When they make a mistake, I've got, a 19-year-old, when he makes a mistake, he calls us up and wants to chat through it.
That's great.
They're hearing your message. Remember, we model behavior for them. So even if we think that what we're doing is not being noticed by them, they notice. So great example. Got my phone right here. My phone doesn't go near the dinner table, which is very hard for me at times. I'm not going to lie.
Uh-oh.
But you know what? The kids see us engage with yeah, not turned upside down next to you, because that's what I find away with.
Doesn't count.
I swear you have cameras in this house. I swear you do.
Well, we all go through the same thing, but we're constantly modeling the behavior. So if we're constantly on our phone texting, I work a ton. I've got but when I'm with the kids, there are times I just have to put it away, just like I expect them to put school away for half an hour during dinner. That can be done. If the two of you argue, they're going on a frequent basis, then they're going to see parents arguing on a frequent basis, and they're going to think that that's okay to do when they become parents. Now, I'm not saying don't argue in front of your kids. I would encourage that, but I would also encourage you to resolve the problem in a very rational way, so the kids can see people that love each other argue, people that love each other solve problems, and they hug when it's over. Those are the things that we need. So when those kids are doing what they're not supposed to, and they think they know it all, just remember, you've modeled good behavior, you've taught them, you've given them that core. If you can give them that core, then let them be a little difficult now and again, because it's just, your life is going to be worse if you just totally get caught up in that. So it's also about you guys too. You need to enjoy each other as a couple, as parents. And when it gets like that, just take a step back and they'll figure it out.
That's great.
Getting a job. Do you suggest teens, how do we talk about if we feel like we're concerned that our kids aren't motivated enough they're not understanding the importance of getting a job? What can we do as parents to try to help our kids become an adult?
And the first thing that I think the kids need to understand, and they're going to say to you, is like we're in the middle of a pandemic, is that we can't get a job. You can get a job. As a matter of fact, there's actually really nice jobs out there. I've got a lot of teenage clients right now that are getting short hour jobs, working 3-4 hours a week during busy shifts here and there, which is great. It's a great way to get your feet into the work world. Again, it's about having that conversation at the right time. So don't spontaneously say to your child, you got to get a job. It's like, hey, I want to talk to you about getting a job. So tomorrow after dinner, we're going to talk about the importance of getting a job. Think about why you should get a job. If you think you shouldn't get a job, then think about that too. Tell me why you shouldn't. If you've got a kid that's in the AP curriculum and making straight A's, they may not have time for a job. So that may be the reason why. But most teenagers can figure out the time to make for a job. Talk about how, when you have more money, you can, talk about budgeting and spending and buying the things that you want. So the benefits of the job, the social aspects, the financial aspects, you're building resume material for your college resume and for your job resume. Now, son or daughter, tell me why you don't think you should get a job. Like, ask them what they're thinking, because most of them aren't going to have good reasons. But if they do have a good reason, like I said, I'm in the AP curriculum, I'm studying 5 hours a night, and I'm making straight A's. Okay, well, that's a job. That's a job that's going to get you a college scholarship that's going to make you a lot of money. So
I love it. So you got to have a discussion. You got to be able to, instead of just directing, you need to get a job. It needs to be, can we sit down and talk and discuss the benefits of getting a job at your age? Something like that. And then just have that conversation. And of course, have some supporting facts and supporting information so that you're just not saying the same thing over and over.
You got it. Always, as we said on the last podcast, better to have a discussion, than an argument. So always look for discussion opportunities. And the job's got so many benefits to it. I strongly believe in kids working when it is appropriate.
Beautiful.
I think for us going back, our parents were more strict, and I think us when we were growing up, you listened to your parents. You didn't talk back. You didn't disrespect. So I find that a little more challenging I'm trying to navigate that because that's how we were raised, and our kids are they're pretty respectful. And for me, I'm trying to be more understanding and, see where they're coming from. Because my mother was like, no, you don't talk back. You don't disrespect me. You do what I say, not as I do.
I think that's a very good point, because I think a lot of parents say, when I was, young, I couldn't get away with everything you're getting away with.
Well, that's a rich topic of discussion. But first off, it's okay to be the parent and say, you're going to do this because I said so. Something that in my life, if you would have asked me as I was having children, oh, am I ever going to tell my kids they just have to do it because I said so? I'd have said no. But this is what I've learned, both as a parent and as a professional, is that sometimes you just need to have that boundary. And for the most part, if you've done your job, your kids will respect that. So keep in mind, it's okay to say no. Now, to the bigger question is, why is it like that? Our world is so much different than it was when our parents were parenting us. It was a much more, dad goes to work and mom stays at home. And when your father gets home, you're going to get in trouble. Life doesn't look like that now. Both parents are working now. We're also more sensitive to the world around us because of social media, television, being connected. Mm-hmm. Schools are now teaching emotional health. So we're getting all these messages about, it's better to try and lead your kids and have them and teach them to make right decisions. So I think I said it before, it's about creating a positive environment. So having positive conversations, turning negatives not into positives and foregoing consequences, but turning the situation into, as I used before, the F paper. You got an F, I could yell at you, and say you better go study. But no, you develop the plan and empower them to develop the plan. And hopefully they'll come up with a good one. And if they don't, then you may have to step in and just be the parent and say, we're cutting off the internet for everybody in the house from 8 to 10 o'clock at night, and you're going to study. And then they're going to go, well, I can't get online to see my stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, you just do that before we do that. So they're always going to have an excuse. So, but I think I like the environment of more collaborative, more chatting, more talking. Probably one of the few, there's been some positives in COVID-19, but the depth of dinner conversations we're having with our kids, despite the fact that we're eating with them a lot more frequently, are like, they linger now a little bit longer than they used to.
Yeah.
I think out of boredom, but also because we're now sort of treating them like adults.
It's great.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, though, I do want to give you 1 minute to talk about whatever you want to talk or share with the world.
Well, it's always about my personal mission of making life better. So you know what? I've been with the cold weather where I am right now, it's been on my mind that we just need to stay active, stay healthy, get outside, get natural sunlight. Don't let the weather beat you down on top of everything else. I know you guys are, I'm assuming, in beautiful Southern California somewhere.
Yes.
So, I don't know that.
Although it rained today, but yes, it has been nice.
But you know what, guys, just get outside, make the most of it. Drag your kids with you. Take your dog for a walk. It's all about being healthy and active. And if you can stay active, you're just going to feel a lot better in general. So that's my message.
Love it.
For them. Yeah.
Love it.
That's awesome.
So Dr. Russell, where can everyone find out more about you?
Teenparentingexpert.com is a great place to go. I've got an office in St. Louis and another one in Park City, Utah. I go back and forth quite a bit. And so feel free to look me up, and there's lots of good articles on there to read about all the things we've just been talking about on that website.
Love
That's
it.
Great.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Russell. Take care of yourself. Have a wonderful, happy holidays. And thank you again for joining us here at the Family Rules.
All right. Thank you, guys, and good luck with the show. Excited that I was your first guest.
You set the bar way up here,
Yes.
so let's hopefully we can keep it rolling.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Russell. There you have it. I love Dr. Russell Hyken. I thought it was such a great talk, very informative. I feel I've grown as a parent just by listening to the guy. I really think so highly of him. But before we close this video, Franny, I'm curious to know, what is your big takeaway from the talk?
My biggest takeaway was to try to be more compassionate and understanding with your teenager, because they are trying to navigate life, as are we.
Yeah, let them go out there. Let them go for what they want to do. Let them make mistakes. And instead of saying, I told you so, take the angle of, what did you learn from it? How did you grow? And I think if we can kind of be their teammate, their partner, they will be the best. They will grow to be the best they can be. We also want to remind you that if you like the video, to like it, to make sure you leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Anything else you want to say?
I hope you enjoy it as much as we did.